Good afternoon. The text being dealt with has been ingeniously crafted. Sir, I hope I'm audible. I hope you have your pen and paper along for the notes. Good afternoon. The text being dealt with has been ingeniously crafted by Kalidasa, sustaining the Rasa tradition as espoused by the Sanskrit formal exposition on performing arts, by the virtue of which the play Abhijanana Sakuntalam, or the recognition of Sakuntala in 7 acts as discussed for the induction to the historical background of the play and playwright on the 11th of January 2020, the date of Kalidasa by B.C. Majumdar. According to Dr. Majumdar, Kalidasa does not appear to have been the court poet of any Raja at all. He must have he must have came he must have gained a good deal by writing his works and by being rewarded by the imperial Guptas. He seemed to have lived principally at Ujjain, where he composed his drama Sakuntala. He did not dedicate his drama to any Raja, but presented it for being enacted at the local festival of the god Mahakala. It may be during his last days the poet became closely associated with the imperial Guptas. Few important excerpts from the additional note, that is Kalidasa's date by Chandrarajan. Tradition holds that Kalidasa was the court poet of Vikramaditya, who ruled at Ujjain, a king who was a great conqueror and hero, a munificent patron of the arts, learned, wise, and accomplished, a king who embodied the ideal of kingship in himself, who drove the invading Sakas out of Malava, presumably, and established the Vikrama or Samvat era in 57 BC to commemorate his victory. Kalidasa's patron is identified by some scholars as King Vikramaditya, son of Mahendraditya of the Pramara dynasty, ruling at Ujjain in the first millennium BC. This dynasty belonged to the Malava, mentioned in history as one of the clans following a republican form of government. This would be at the close of the first millennium BC and accord with the first century BC date of 57 BC for the poet and of his association with the Vikramaditya who defeated the Sakas. A veiled reference to Devabhuti, the last of Sunga emperors, places in Raghuvamsam Kalidasa at the close of the first millennium BC. Devabhuti ascended the throne in 82 BC and was assassinated in 73 BC on the orders of his minister Vasudeva, who proclaimed. And last of the 3 dates suggested by Chandrarajan places Kalidasa around 4th to 5th century AD with the feel and tone of Gupta art. A note on text and translation again by Chandrarajan. Kalidasa's work have come down to us in several recensions. The Bengali and Devanagari recension, which means divergent versions of a text, being the prominent, the Bengali recension being the prominent, and the Devanagari too. The three tools separating the Bengali recension from the Devanagari recension are, according to Edwin Giro and Chandrarajan, Devanagari has abrupt transition. According to Chandrarajan, the main difference between Devanagari and the Bengali recension is that Devanagari recension has abrupt transition. It is not fully and it does not have finely and fully drawn characters and the lack of caption in the Devanagari recension. But according to Edwin Giro, who divides the play into 5 samdhis and which he describes, and the art form that he describes as imitation of the world, and I quote, Raghava Bhatta's commentary, the Athavya Dyotanika on the Devanagari recension of the Sakuntala is remarkable. Dushanta, Sakuntala, Kanava and other minor characters from the Hermitage, Vidushaka, Madhavya, court jester was already discussed on 11th of January, and the reference material of the text mentioned have also been circulated through WhatsApp. It is further elaborated in slide 50. These are the points that were discussed under a note on text and translation, Devanagari and Bengali recension. For the Vedic and the Shakta school, also Rasa and Indian drama. According to Vedic and Shaiva school of thought, as is delineated in the work of Dr. Surendranath and Dr. Das Gupta and Dr. Chandradhar, the theoretical exposition of an ancient school of thought structured around the belief in sentience has remarkably influenced the aesthetics of the plot. This is what he has to say for the Vedic and the Shaiva school of thought. This brings us to the Rasa theory as formulated by Bharat Muni in the Natya Shastra, entrenched in this philosophy dealing with the art and with the beauty and the taste, and as is explained by Edwin Giraud as the development of Rasa. In the beginning of the play, we see the use of Shringara Rasa and its conventional development from Vipralamba, that is separation, to Sambhoga, that is union, and Veera Rasa, that is the heroic Rasa, as the two primary. In the subsequent acts, we witness Hasya Rasa, that is comic, fear, Bhavya, Bhaya, anger, Krodha, pitiable, Karuna, and Adbhuta, wonder as secondary rasas. Hasya, fear, anger, pitiable, and Adbhuta. Indian drama by A.N. Dwivedi sheds light on the brief history of Indian drama and its important aspects, which are Kalidasa as literary sensation, territory of fantasy amidst the supernatural, allegorical and theological dramatic piece, Bharata and theory of drama, modern history of Indian dramas, 1850 modern theatrical activity, Indian drama post 1947. This is the recapitulation of the discussion we had on 11th of January. Coming to Abhijan Shakuntalam, the play ingeniously crafted by the renowned classical Indian playwright Kalidasa is in 7 acts. So we'll straight away go to the act starting from the prologue. The play opens. The play opens with a benediction or a prayer to Lord Shiva. The 8 forms in order that are mentioned are water, fire, the priest, sun and moon, space, earth and air. The invocation follows the epic tradition and seeks blessing and inspiration from the divine, thereby sanctifying the play. The Sutradhar, narrator or the director then addresses the actress wife, introducing in the progress of the dialogue the play being performed for the audience. The narrator director deftly moves to presenting the hero Nayaka of the play, King Dusanta, as the later arrives on stage in full hunting regalia, chasing fleet of action. Benediction is a ceremonial prayer invoking divine protection. It is a prayer to Shiva, who is omniscient and omnipresent. These lines are symbolic of the eroticism in the play that gives the play its unique softness. This is also an indication of the idea of love that is being portrayed, which rises above the narrow confinement of physical love to spiritual love. In the following lines by director Sutradhar, the one who holds the thread of the play delineates the narrative. Woodland breezes blow fresh and fragrant, having consorted with patali flowers. The word consort here is representative of mingling of souls, such that the essence of one thing becomes the palpability of the other. The summary of the Act 1 is as follows. It is entitled The Chase. Act 1 takes place in the forest on the foothills of the Himalayas and moves to the hermitage of the great sage Kanava by the river Malini. The king Dusanta appears, followed by his charioteer in hot pursuit of a deer, specifically a black buck, which is a sacred animal. Dusanta is stopped in his hunt by an ascetic who reminds him of his duty. Furthermore, Dusanta has sent where such slaughter is sacrilegious. At the ascetic's urging, Dusanta decides to go to the hermitage of Kannava to pay his respect as well as enjoy the hospitality offered there. As they near the hermitage, Dusanta takes off his royal ornaments and weapons as it seems unfit for such a spiritual place. On entering, he sees three women watering plants, and one of them is Sakuntala, who is extraordinarily beautiful and immediately captivates Dusanta. He hides behind some trees to further observe the trio and finally reveals himself to them. The women welcome a disguised Dusanta into the group, where he learns that Sakuntala is the adopted daughter of the sage Kannava. She is in fact the daughter of the Apsara nymph Menaka and the seer Viswamitra. Dusanta questions lead him to figuring out her Kshatriya origin, which makes Sakuntala a suitable bride for him. Before Dusanta can learn of Shakuntala's feeling for him, they hear the news of how the arrival of Dusanta's hunting party has frightened an elephant and that the elephant is now wreaking havoc in the forest. As the party splits, Sakuntala realizes that she has fallen in love with Dusanta, and the two depart with longing for the other. The critical analysis for Act 1 that the characters mentioned are King, Suta, Ascetics, Sakuntala, Priyambada, and Anasuya. Anasuya and Priyambada are Sakuntala's friend. The scene happens in the forest in the foothills of Himalayas. The second part of the scene happens in the hermitage of Kannava by river Malini. The chase, as has been the act, entitles in the entry of Dushanta in the entitled is the entry of Dusanta in the hermitage ground before even Sakuntala is referred to in the play. The king subordinates his power to the ascetic symbolism of the hermitage and becomes a dharmic hero who is given the boon of a son. The tension between the two themes of nature and of duty, nature that is love, and of duty that is dharma, heroism in the dharmatic mood of the play, and the resolution comes in the end when the son is to be the inheritor of moral quality, ethical estate, and dharma. The opposition between duty and love is highlighted in the first act, which remains unresolved, where the two characters and the principles they represent are depicted in the state of mere contrast as externals having their own sphere. King is from the capital while Sakuntala is from the hermitage. The relation of love and duty cannot be reduced to the status of service to the other, a reduction that destroys the independence of both the principles and fails to state their integral subordination. Act 1 and ends with an infatuated and with an infatuation and course of seduction halted as both Sakuntala and Dusanta are recalled to the duty. The play ends where it began as in the act 1. The play ends, but what I mean by this is that in act 7 we see that the play ends in the exact place where it started from. King hides in bushes to discover Sakuntala, so he does in act 7, the last act, to discover his son. The king is subjected to a test of his valor, to the bee in the first act and the serpent in the last, passing which the king enters into a conversation that validates the relationship of the persons in Act 2. We see that the act takes place in the forest and introduces Madhvya, the court jester or the clown, and also a close friend of Dusanta the king, who accompanies about the physical pains he is who complains about the physical pains he is undergoing because of following Dusanta on his hunting expeditions. Dusanta is presented as suffering from love and describes from infatuation and describes Sakuntala to Madhvya in sensual terms. He then asks Madhvya to help him gain entry into the hermitage on some pretext or the other. Characteristic of a jester, Madhvya is quick to respond in a witty manner and tells Dusanta that as the king, he can rightfully enter the hermitage to demand the royal tax owed to him by the ascetics. Their conversation is interrupted by the arrival of two ascetics who request Dusanta to protect their sacred rights from demons bent on disturbing them. Dusanta readily agrees as it complements his desire to visit the hermitage without arousing any suspicion. However, his joy is cut short by the arrival of a demon with of a messenger with a message from the queen mother asking for his immediate return to Hastinapur. Torn between his duty towards the ascetic and his mother, Dusanta finally decides to go to the hermitage and sends Madhavya instead of himself to Hastinapur. Dusanta, however, is careful to mask his interest in Sakuntala and tells Madhavya that his interest in her was just a whim. The critical analysis for Act 2, that is entitled Concealment of the Telling. The important characters discussed here are Madhvya, guard, Revatka, General Bhadrasena, king, Rarabhaka, the queen mother's messenger, and two young hermits. In the second act, the condition of both lovers has become that of effort to find a way to unite, despite the differences of their status, and the two principles of love and dharma are visible not as externals but manifested through their respective accomplishment. The king, in conversation with the jester, seeks a way of remaining in the hermitage to pursue his infatuation. And the reason is found when some external forces are mentioned by the hermits threatening the tranquility of the sacrifices being performed. The king maintains the pretext of a protector while pursuing Sakuntala, though love and duty become an amorous game where duty is ancillary to love. The king's love for Sakuntala is explicitly recognized here as something which needs to be concealed, and dharma is reduced to an appearance. So when the queen mother invites the king to return to the capital, not only does Dushyanta send Madhavya, the court jester, but has to lie about his reasons. In this view, we are made to question if a king's dharma is a mere embodiment of appearance. It seems the king's dharma has been sabotaged by love, which becomes self-evident in the act where dharma itself is transferred in Act 3, where dharma itself, Act 4, where dharma itself is transferred to an absent and irascible sage Durvasa. The second and third acts have the same ethical structure. In these acts, the opposition between love and duty is further developed beyond its initial statement as the lovelorn characters present pursue their love as an alternative to an obligation. The king to remain in the forest while sending his clown to the palace with civil messages, Sakuntala to declare her love to the king via the Gandharva route. Sakuntala has indeed progressed from her generalized state of affection for living beings to a definition on one of them, that is the king, Dusanta. The mode of love is focused through the efforts is that of longing and preoccupation with the beloved object, that is passion. Similarly, the mode of heroism suitable to effort is expressed as the king as protector. The mode differs from Act 1 as love there is expressed as affection of life and the heroism of dharmic vigor by clearly sustaining a relation to one another. The second act witnesses both the playful departure of Madhvya and the bashful Shakuntala. The king's love then seems comic or better ironic at stage, a craftful use of hasya rasa. So a short note on rasa. We see that in Act 1, Sringara and Veera rasa have been established as the primary rasa. In the subsequent acts, it is the hasya, the fear, the krodha, hasya, fear, bhaya, krodha, anger, karuna, pitiable, and adbhuta, wonder, which work as secondary rasas. Rasa set rise from a combination various and of which characterize in quite a technical sense dimensions of the play as performed. We see that Rasa looks here both to the love relationship narrowly defined of the hero and heroine and the universal harmonies of pre-societal life that are embodied in Indian asrama ideal. Similarly, duty or dharma involving renunciation for others' interest suggests Veera Rasa, the heroic sentiment, and it is via the character of the king that this theme is foremost part stated and developed. There are three types of Veera Rasa, that is Yuddha Veera, Daya Veera, and the Dana Veera. It is the Yuddha Veera that is characterized, Yuddha Veera Rasa that is characterized through the character of Dusanta. This act continues in the forest and opens with a prelude which functions to inform the audience of events that have occurred off stage. Here, the audience is told of Dusanta's success at thwarting the demon and how Shakuntala is suffering from a heat stroke, making her feel hot and feverish. Shakuntala is actually shown to be suffering from infatuation, unable to keep Dusanta out of her thoughts. She longs for his company. Her two companions, Priyambada and Anasuya, try to soothe her. Dusanta presently arrives at the bower where the three women are resting, and on hearing Sakuntala confess her love for him, reveals himself to them. Sakuntala's companions leave the two lovers alone, and in the process, Dusanta tries to woo Shakuntala. However, their love play is interrupted by the arrival of Gautami, the matron of the hermitage, and the lovers separate. A despondent Dusanta is called to fight the demons tormenting the ascetic. Critical analysis of Act 3. Act 3, to an extent, is the reenactment of Act 1. In Act 3, the main focus of controversial inquiry falls on the dharmic character of the protagonist's love instead of Sakuntala's suitability as a love subject. Sakuntala and Dushyanta succumb to a less than dharmic interpretation of love. The Gandharva ritual binds the two eager lovers in a mutual consent to proclaim their love. The haze springs many obstructions, with love and dharma being reduced to mere desire and means to its physical accomplishment. Act 3 ends with a seduction halted. Both characters are recalled to duty, which was abandoned by both. Sakuntala by Gautami, the symbol of asrama dharma, and the king by assembled demons to his Raj Dharma. The third act develops to reflect on the theme of play, which is infused with new complexity, the sense in which the protagonist emerged from the state of all pure potentiality to the first level of. This scene is still in the forest, and much has happened in the meantime. The prelude in the Act 4 reveals that Sakuntala and Dushyanta have married according to the Gandharva rites. Dushyanta has since then left for Hastinapur. While Shakuntala's companions discuss Dusanta's dedication to her, the great sage Durvasa Rishi arrives at the hermitage. Sakuntala, distracted by the thoughts of Dusanta, does not attend to the great sage. Durvasa Rishi, known for his temper, immediately curses her, saying, "You shall be lost in his thoughts. Though you goad his memory hard, he shall fail to remember you." As Durvasa Rishi storms off, Anasuya attempts to plead with the sage and manages to extract a wherein, at the presentation of a token of recognition, assured or at this because Dusanta has given a ring to Shakuntala as a token of his love, and so believe that the curse will be broken without much harm. The prelude ends with both the companions deciding to spare Shakuntala from the knowledge of the curse. Anasuya begins to question Dusanta's actions and wonders how to inform Kanava of his daughter's marriage and pregnant. Resolution arrives in the form of a spiritual voice that announces the union of Shakuntala and Dushanta to the great sage. Kanava is overjoyed at this and decides to send Shakuntala to Dushanta's court with a few ascetics escorts. Shakuntala's departure from the hermitage is poignantly described. Everyone is filled with sorrow seeing her leave. Even the plants and animals forsake their natural routines and grieve her absence from the holy grove. As Shakuntala bids farewell to her home and embraces her family and friends for the last time, Kannava instructs her on her duty to the king and others at the palace. The finality of Shakuntala's separation from the world of the hermitage is established through Kannava's words, where he says that she can only return after fulfilling her duties as a wife and as a mother in the final years of her life with her husband. The critical analysis of Act 4. The important characters mentioned are Anasuya, Priyambada, Sakuntala, Durvasa Rishi, Harita, Kanava, Gautami, and Sangarva. Harita is a hermit boy. Durvasa's curse in the prelude marks the beginning of the play. Anasuya and Priyambada decide to hide, and therefore, assu- uh, as they are assured that she has the means of ensuring recognition, that is the ring that has been given to her by King Dusanta. The festive ceremonies are happening for Sakuntala's departure. Sakuntala's natural love for the forest and its denizens must be given up. Shakuntala experiences the pains of separation and annulment, which are integral to human love. The tenderness of parting is all the more poignant, for it is precisely the generalized tenderness of girlish adolescence that is being abandoned, and all concerned are aware of the necessity of this going forward into more human and more dangerous affections. The appositeness of the sage's curse in this context is all the more telling, for it not only represents the forces of convention and protocol that Sakuntala ignores, and to which she must turn from her beloved forest. But Durvasa, the irascible Muni, is thematically the form of Veera Rasa, heroism suitable to the expression of love in separation. The powers of renunciation desire precisely from the conquest of the self and make virtue of the very separation which Sakuntala suffers. Here too, heroism is the subdominant rasa, sustains relation to Shingara rasa. The relation between love and heroism, however appropriate, is not the final one we seek. Why? Because they are not balanced. The curse ring recognition theme is thus the subplot that has inserted itself and also is crucial in developing the main plot. The fourth and the sixth act are also ethically parallel, the same way the second and the third were. In the fourth act, Shakuntala leaves the hermitage and all the natural affections and experiences viraha for the first time. In the sixth act, the king experiences viraha and has abandoned his dharmic character and Rajadharma. Both the characters are absent whilst the other experiences loss. It is interesting to note how ascetic Durvasa's curse in Act 4 is a primary factor behind Sakuntala's venturing out of hermitage for a social position suited for her dharma, and it is similar to Dushanta leaving with Manali in Act 6. Coming to Act 5, the repudiation of Shakuntala. The repudiation of Shakuntala. The prelude takes place in Dusanta's royal palace and begins with the chamberlain praising the king's hard work in maintaining peace and prosperity in the kingdom, and his exemplary behavior in all things concerned with the welfare of the state and his subjects. Shakuntala and her entourage appear in the royal palace and wait for an audience with Dusanta. One of the ascetics, Sangarva, relays Kannava's message and asks Dusanta to accept Shakuntala as his wife. Dusanta, under the influence of the curse, does not remember Shakuntala and refuses to acknowledge her as his wife. Shakuntala tries to prove her claim by presenting the token of recognition, but realizes instead that she has lost it. Dusanta casts doubt on Shakuntala's virtuosity and honesty and tells the accompanying ascetics to take her back with them. The ascetics, however, refuse to take her back, saying that if she is lying, then she will be a stain on Kannava's honor and therefore cannot be allowed to go back. And if she is indeed speaking the truth, then she must be with her husband, even if it means living in servitude to him. Shakuntala is thus left stranded and alone with no one by her side, and she cries for her mother earth to open up and swallow her whole. Three important issues here are women's position in society, the notion of honor, the similarity between this particular episode and a similar scene from another famous epic, that is Mahabharata. Women were positioned in the safe keeping of their father or the husband, as it is clear from the various references in the text. Secondly, if a woman were not married conventionally, as is the case with Shakuntala, and the husband refused to acknowledge her, then she would be a stain on the honor of the father. Thirdly, Sita in the Ramayana is faced with a similar situation when a washerman, Dhobi, casts aspersions on her chastity on her return from Lanka. Finally, the king's high priest comes up with a solution to her to let her remain in the king's palace till she gives birth, and should the child she bear be the son prophesied to Dusanta, then Shakuntala may be accepted, maybe will be accepted as his lawful wife and take her rightful place by his side. No sooner do the ascetics, high priest, and Shakuntala leave that the high priest rushes back to Dusanta and tells him how, as Shakuntala wept, a bright light in the form of a woman from the Apsara pool came and took Shakuntala with her. Dusanta dismisses the whole affair, and yet he feels a strange sensation of missing something and a poignant ache in his heart that seems to validate Shakuntala's claim. Critical analysis of Act 5. The important characters mentioned over here are Madhvya, king, first and second part, Shakuntala, Gautami, Sangarva, high priest, Saradvata, chamberlain, Vitravati. The king reappears in Act 5 again, embodying the form of Veera suitable to the play's progress. It is not surprising his character has become that of Durvasa. He angrily renounces his Gandharva wife and the promised issue of that union. The mode of his love imitating again Sakuntala is that of renunciation and renunciation indeed of all that he holds dear. It is only this that Shakuntala of the forest that it is not only the Sakuntala of the forest that he refuses to acknowledge, and so even in his confusion, he expresses an attitude similar to Sakuntala on leaving the forest. Thus are the themes of dharma and love intimately entwined. At this point, we are obliged to consider the element of the plot that is always considered weakest by the Western or modern critics as aggressive. It is the sage's curse, sage Durvasa's curse. According to Edwin Giraud, it is an example of white supremacists' contrived idea of globalizing and glorifying their value system as superior. As the rich theory of rasa is as the rich theory of rasa is aesthetically sustaining the rhetoric of Sakuntala. The curse ring recognition theme is thus the subplot that has interest in itself and is also crucial in developing the main plot. The hope of attainment that is there in Act 5 represents a withdrawal from natural and contingent emotions and is even in its apparently negative quality, a decided advance on the path to success, in as much as this must involve a relation between emotional modes of love and duty that is inherent and proper. In fifth act, the climax of the play in Western dramatic terms, in which the king of Sakuntala confronts one another and express in anger and contempt their failure of recognition. The latent emotions of the characters reach such a sharp opposition that the very texture of the play seems on the verge of being asunder. The climax is a turning point. The climax, that is the ring, the curse and the ring motive. The climax is a turning point in the sense that it ushers in the very inversion of both characters, original naive infatuation, an inversion out, which is in turn born the eventual reversion to. In the Act 5, the twin emotional tones of fear, that is bhaya, and anger express the nature of separation, then in the course of achievement. Sakuntala's fear of the unknown outside, the hermitage is indeed the mode of her parting and pursuit of human love. The sage's heroism is both founded on anger and is developed to a pitch that suitably expresses the hostility of love and dharma. The prelude, the Act 6 starts with the prelude. It is entitled Separation from Sakuntala. The prelude informs us about a fisherman who has been found with the lost royal ring. The guards, soldiers, law enforcers of accuse him of stealing the ring, but he claims to have found it in the stomach of a fish he caught. The fisherman's innocence is proven once Dusanta sees the ring and rewards the man for finding it. Dusanta then remembers Shakuntala, their marriage, and is promised to bring her to his palace. He's ashamed of his behavior and cannot figure out why his memory lapsed at that particular moment. He's distraught about how he repudiated Sakuntala and the cruel ways in which he doubted her. His sorrow at having lost his beloved is so severe that he orders the cancellation of the celebration of the spring festival. Dusanta tries to recreate his first encounter with Shakuntala by painting it and conversing with the painting. Madhya laments how the king has become so despondent that he has lost all vitality. Meanwhile, Mirakesi, a friend of Sakuntala's mother Menaka, o- quietly observes Dusanta's behavior. Finding his remorse genuine, she goes back to the Apsara pool to report her findings to Shakuntala. Even as Dusanta is wrecked with remorse, he deals with matters of the state and is approached with the problem of solving the inheritance right of a rich merchant who dies without a legal heir. The merchant wealth is said to be appropriated by the royal treasury, but Dusanta asks for the wealth to be given to one of the merchant's pregnant wife, thereby ensuring that the child to be born is not left penniless. Dusanta feels bad for his ancestors as he himself is without any heir, which will leave them without anyone to perform sacred rites and rituals. This adds to his misery and he faints. On waking, Dusanta learns that some invisible entity is threatening Madhya. As he rushes to save his friend, it is revealed that the entity is Matali, the charioteer of Lord Indra, who, on seeing a dejected Dusanta, devises this plan to rouse him into action. Matali's requests Dusanta to fight on the behalf of the gods against demons bent on destroying them. Dusanta readily agrees and they leave on Indra's chariot. The critical analysis of Act 6. It begins with a prelude. The important characters are King Madhya, Matali, and Chaturika, the one who draws the painting of Sakuntala, fisherman chief, Apsara Mirakesi. Uh, in Act 6, love refined through the hostility of aestheticism becomes its very opposite. Despair and heroism in effect disappear. The king ceases to be dharmic hero, withdraws from the affairs of state into depression and loss of identity, and this is precisely referred to by Mitali, Indra's charioteer, who calls Dusanta back to the service at the end of Act 6. Indra's charioteer Mitali enters in at the end of Act 6 to recall the king to resume his dharmic identity, his Rajadharma. In the fifth act, mode of love is pitiable, that is the Karuna Rasa, the mode of sympathy for the lost and for the great enterprise forwarding. The relation between pity and love in separation is in any case so close as not to require great defense. Coming to Act 7. In Act 7, that is titled Sakuntala's Prosperity, this act occurs in the realm of the celestial being and then moves to the hermitage of Maricha. After defeating the demons, Dusanta and Matali are on their way back to the earth when Dusanta sees the holy hermitage of sage Maricha and expresses his desire to seek his blessings. At the hermitage, Matali requests an audience with Maricha, and in the ensuing way, Dusanta comes across a young boy playing with the lion's cub and playfully tormenting his caretakers. He notices the marked prophecies that was meant to be on his son, on the young boy, and begins to yearn for a child. In the course of the conversation with the caretakers, Dusanta realizes that the boy might indeed be his own very son, and after picking up the boy's magical amulet that only his parents or Marisha could touch, it cements Santa's belief of being the father. Shakuntala appears at the news of a stranger's arrival and at first is unable to recognize Dushanta. In a touch of irony, it is Dushanta now who asks to be recognized as the boy's father. Dushanta explains his loss of memory and now he regained it at the sight of the ring, and a happy Shakuntala accepts his explanation. The reunited family goes to Maricha to seek his blessings, where Maricha reveals the truth about Durvasha Rishi's curse. Dushanta is relieved at the revelation and is absolved of his cruel behavior. Kanava is also informed of the events and the family leaves from earth for the celestial realm. The play ends here. The critical analysis of Act 7. In the last act, love assumes its fully developed human form. that of Sambhoga or love in union, but the reunion of Dushanta is not just a mere liaison in the forest, it is a fully authenticated not only by Dharma, blessings of Maricha, Aditi, Kanava, Gautami, and publicly acknowledged that Shakuntala becomes the queen, but also by the tiny son playing with the lion cub, who at the picture who is the future Chakravartin, in the embodiment of love and duty's inherent independence. Uh, the independent significance of the son should not be underestimated. The king is again a dharmic hero, but the scope of his heroism is no longer external to the world of the hermitage. He is king both in heaven and over nature, and this has become possible only in his conquest of the forest nymph Sakuntala. The characters of the king and queen are now expressed positively as are now express positively the proper inseparability of the principles of love and duty. We see that the character of Sakuntala is righteous, is moral, has a strength of mind, while the character of Dusanta, established as a dharmic hero who has to maintain the balance through the penance for his self-indulgence. And the character of Madhya is also important because of his sharp wit and caustic remarks. He's the Vidushaka, he's the wise man of the play, who though has been characterized as a court jester, yet his words are not mere paltry, insignificant remarks on the situation at present, but actually words of wisdom. Genre conventions of Indian classical romance and fairy tale, Abhijan Shakuntalam, we'll see that the four main elements in this are romance, fairy tale, love and duty, hermitage, and the court. The Shringara Rasa, the Veera Rasa, in Shringara Rasa, the conventional part, separation and union. In the fairy tale, the mention of the curse ring motive, the celestial, a dharmic hero, and a righteous prospective queen in love and duty. In hermitage and the court, of understanding balance and deed, and the ancient school of thought in India, how the balance has to be maintained. For example, in the case of Shakuntala, we see that how the play progresses. The love and duty that the protagonists have renounced till the climax has to be sustained in order for the idea of love and duty to be proper and the balance to be maintained. Um, the play Sakuntala is a beautiful blend of romance and fairy tale with elements of comedy. In the last sections of the Satpatha Brahmana that are devoted wholly to a description of a rituals of the horse sacrifice, where the names of some of the kings who performed them are mentioned, we come across this line. In Nadapit, the Apsara Shakuntala conceived Bharata. This is the earliest literary reference to Shakuntala and her son, who performed many horse sacrifices on the banks of the river Yamuna after he had conquered the world, thus fulfilling the prophecy of the mystic personage Maricha in the place. Nadapit is glossed by the commentator as Kannava's hermitage, but the identification has obviously been made on the basis of the Sakuntala Dushanta story in the Mahabharata, where, however, the name Nadapit does not occur. The original story of Sakuntala referred to in the SB is lost to us. We have only a very long and early version of this epic. The play world has thus created contains another world, the world of the deep and dark forest near the river Malini, the green world into which we are lured by the deer, and where we meet Shakuntala, the child of nature, who, as noted earlier on, is also envisaged as the guardian deity of the woodland. In the Vedic myth referred to, Shakuntala is an Apsara and the daughter of an Apsara in the epic tale, which is the immediate source of the play. This is an aspect of her origin, and that is important to keep in mind. Because in the play she is seen as the lady of nature, one who lives in the green world, into whom has flowered the beauty born of murmuring sound, possesses the beauty of nature as well as its holiness. In her nature and nurturer blend without being in opposition to each other, for her green world is also an asrama, a hermitage, a tapovana or penance grove, where tranquility prevails, ordered by discipline. She and the jasmine are constantly brought together. They are sisters born of the same mother, that is nature. This image of sandal tree will the image of sandal tree reoccurs in the play. It is significant in the context of Act 7, to which we shall refer. Act 5 is a clear proof that she is trampled on, stripped, and mutilated, and is at the point of death when she is wrapped from the astonished gaze of the beholders by a shaft of light. In this connection, it is very important to note two facts made clear in the play. Firstly, Shakuntala is never seen as actually living in the gilded world of the court and being a part of it. The fact is only talked about in various ways by different people at different times, but it is not part of the play. She is never brought into direct contact with the queen or the queen mother or any other ladies of the Shanta's palace. Secondly, the benediction is not spoken in this play in the world of the court, in the king's world. It is spoken in the world beyond, which is the perfected world of the primal parents, that is Maricha and Aditi. There is talk certainly of the return to this world, but the play comes to its end in Maricha's hermitage on Hemakuta, which mortals cannot reach. Before the king can enter the world, enter this world of hermitage of Maricha, he has to be purified. First, he proves his worth by battling the forces of darkness and disorder that threaten the order of the universe. For this, he has to be rescued from the state of utter despondency into which he had fallen, weighed down by an overwhelming sense of guilt. He had overcome, disoriented, nerveless, and swooned away. It is significant that it is a deep concern for someone close to him, Madhya, that pulls him out of his depression, lacking the will to live. Dushanta's part to Maricha's hermitage and the finding of what has been lost is essentially similar to that of Yaksas in the poem, though they are framed differently because of the differences in the two literary modes, dharma and lyric. The images of sanctity and purification are repeated. Vishnu's triple stride, Ganga's celestial stream, the sacred pool of golden lotuses. The whole Act 7 is placed in the world of Maricha's hermitage, where the highest penances are wrought in the penance groves of the perfected seers. It is a world of which ascetics perform the severest austerities to attain. Here, Maricha, born of the self-existent light, himself performs penance with his consort Aditi. The last stage direction that brings the play to a close is exit all. No distinction is made between the characters belonging to the hermitage and the mortals who have to descend to the Shanta's capital. In Another significant point to note is the last stanza of Sakuntala. Is the note and quality of the final words of the poet and dramatist. The lines are: May the self existent Lord who unites in himself the dark and the light, whose infinite power pervades the universe, annihilate forever the rounds of my birth. Uh, Maricha is described as offspring of the self-existent energy. This should be read in juxtaposition with the benediction. The two worlds of the play, the green world of the woods and the gilded world of the royal palace, are too far apart, and the reconciliation, reunion, and restoration cannot be celebrated in either of them. The moment of epiphany has to happen elsewhere in another world. The two worlds of Acts 1 and 7 reflect each other in many respects, as we shall see. The world of Act 1 is the world of nature, with flowers blooming, honeybees hovering over them, of green foliage and tender young shoots, and birds being prized open, of clear waters flowing in channels to lave the roots of trees, and the fresh, cool spray of Malini's snow fed waters waffled by the breeze. The color words present in the descriptions are those of fresh colors of the woodlands and of budding youth. In Act 7, on the other hand, the color words are drawn mostly from the world of gold gems and jewels, the golden sheen of the waters, the glitters of raindrops, the gleam of the flickering lightning, and the liquid gold of the mountain itself, the red and the gold of sunset. Here, the lotuses are golden, as in Alaka. The palaces of meditation are not green meadows where deer roam, or the roots of trees under the green shade of leafy trees, but jeweled caves with celestial nymphs, gorgeously dressed and jeweled and seductive walking around. It is a world of austere beauty, luminous with the light of the spirit. It is not a world of nature, spontaneous, informed by instinct, but of nature perfected by restraint and disciplining. In the last act, time past, present, and future are brought together in Maricha's blessings to the contained within the golden round of the time. The world in the text is literally the revolution of hundreds of epochs. The interest in this act is focused on the little prince, the future Bharata. Maricha's prophecies echo the incorporeal voice of the mystic fire that has already spoken. The little boy, flanked by two hermit women, is the center of the last act, as Shakuntala, his mother, accompanied by her two friends, is of the first. The king, after dismounting from the chariot, is about to enter the grove of Maricha's hermitage and has his first glimpse of his son. Is a replica of the scene in Act 1, where also the king, dismounting from the chariot at the fringes of the grove of Kannava's hermitage, enters and sees the boy as his mother for the first time. Shakuntala is recognized by virtue of a token of love, not by love itself. It has to be kept in mind. Shakuntala is recognized by virtue of a token of love and not by love itself. Shakuntala's honoring, both heroines are blissfully unaware. Shakuntala is blissfully unaware of the token. To her, love is its own proof and a witness of their chastity. Hence, we realize for the fact that in this place, Shakuntala is not recognized by the virtue of the token of love, is recognized by the virtue of the token of the love and not by love itself. The king at first knew Shakuntala carnally as an object, and frankly as an object of pleasure. The close of the play, it is only at the close of the play that he sees her as a person and knows her truly. Um, it is also important to note that how Priyambada is able to correlate outer beauty with the inner, but Dusanta seems to be unable to do this until the long separation and grief of losing Shakuntala and his son, and an intense sense of guilt gives him eyes to see deeply. When Shakuntala stands before him, pale with suffering, the flesh mortified to let the spirit glow forth, the king truly sees her and knows her. Um, Dushanta had known Shakuntala only carnally in Act 1, which is reversed in Act 7. The play examines accepted ideals and the relation of what seems to what is, of semblance to truth, through the comments of Madhya and by means of ironies built into the structure and language of the play. Recklessly charging towards Kannava's hermitage, chasing a black buck, Dushyanta stops short of killing the sacred animal only when an anchorite stands barring his way. Again, there is unconscious irony in Dushyanta's words, where he admonishes the little boy teasing a lion cub in Maricha's hermitage and describes him as the young of a black serpent that spoils. For other creatures, the pleasant sanctuary, this is the fragrant sandal tree. The play subjects not only the ideal of kingship but also the character of Dushyanta as king and man to an ironic scrutiny. His personal appearance is described in images that convey majesty and strength, as well as uncommon beauty and grace of manner. His frame is likened to that of magnificent tusker roaming the mountains, and his being spare and instinct with energy. His beauty of face and form dazzle like a priceless gem cut and polished by the exquisite art of a master craftsman. A number of images glorify Dushyanta as a godlike hero. The very first image compares him to Shiva himself. But we have to keep in mind that the Suta, charioteer, who makes this comparison is also a bard, and bards are given to praising highly the monarchs they serve. A public image of Dushyanta is built up by the praise words of hermits and bards alike. When the king is in the company of a friend and close companion, Madhya, who is probably a childhood companion of Dushyanta, judging him from his words in Act 2. Often the two faces are dialoguing, commenting on each other, and through carefully arranged juxtapositions, as in Act 2. Another device used to project the two images of king is symbolic gesture. Gesture, Act 1 furnishing a striking example of how symbolic gesture is manipulated to achieve several ends. Dushanta dismounts, takes off the regalia, his crown and jewels, and hands them over with his bow and arrows to the charioteer. This gesture is symbolic in two ways. This is the thing that he does in Act 1. It represents, what does this represent is that it represents the reverence the king feels in the sacred robe and all that it stands for, and for the great sage who presides over it. It also signifies the act of putting off of the royal image. Shakuntala does not see him in his awesome majesty and splendor, but as just as a young handsome courtier, well spoken with an eye for pretty girls. A good deal of good-humored irony is also pointed at the ascetics in the asceticism is quite questioned here, and contrast is drawn a few lines later between Durvasa, self-important and arrogant, and Kanava. The patriarch Kanava is the ideal of a sage put forward, self-restrained and noble, gentle and warm and understanding. Ascetics' claims are also subjected to ironic scrutiny in Act 5. Kanava's disciples do not come off very well. Sangarva is an angry man, arrogant and tactless. We can see him develop into a Durvasa in time. So, Sarvadatta is a cold, harsh, and uncharitable ascetic, somewhat obsessed by the idea of cleanliness. Foreshadowing as a device is used a great deal in the play, and skillfully Sakuntala's adverse fate is mentioned right in the beginning. The sign given to Kanava at the cave of the fire at Prabhasa strike one, however, as being cryptic. Hints of future events are strewn around in the conversation of Shakuntala and her friends, but the most important examples are in Act 5, the theme of failing memory, wakeful one moment, shrouded in darkness the next, and the dying flame in the Chamberlain's speech have subtle overtones. Thus comes the song of betrayed love sung in the background, and we see the strange effect it has on Dusanta. Music makes a potent more ominous. Dusanta stands concealed behind the trees, envying the bee that is hovering around Sakuntala's face. What is different, however, is the streak of callousness underlying the king's comment on Hamsavati's song. Yes, I once loved her deeply. A callousness that turns into cruelty in the trial scene that follows immediately. The reference is not only to her mother Menaka, one of the Apsaras who abandoned her child Shakuntala, but to Shakuntala herself, who, according to him, is trying to pass off her offspring as his child. This is regarding the king's barbed words and venom that and the insults that he subjects Shakuntala to. In the world of the court, which she has characterized as alien soil, on which, like the sapling of the sandal tree rent from the parent mountain, she would not survive. Sakuntala is unimaginably humiliated. The mystic fire has already announced Sakuntala's marriage to Dusanta to Kanava and prophesies the greatness of the son to be born of this union. The marriage is therefore a sanctified one. Doubts about legality of the marriage and the legitimacy of the unborn child would inevitably surface in the mind of the ministers, the courts, and the people. The reconciliation and reunion of Shakuntala and Dusanta takes place in another world, the golden world of the primal pair. That is Maricha and Aditi. Coming to Madhavya, the Vidushaka or jester in the Sanskrit drama is the friend and close companion of the hero. He performs two functions in the play which are related to two meanings contained in the word: a figure of a fun who excites laughter by his odd appearance and manner and his witty speech, and a detractor or critic who deflates everyone around him through the exercise of a sharp and often caustic wit. A relationship of deep affection exists between king and jester. It is reflected even in the tone of their conversation, which has the easy familiarity of two friends who have grown up together from childhood. Madhavya often addresses the king in private as Vyasa, dear friend. The king is able to put off his regalia and his public image, remove himself from the splendor and pressures of the court, and relax in Madhya's company and be himself as he can with no one else. Madhya serves as a foil to the court bards whose duties are to compose and sing hymns of praise to the reigning monarch. His refreshing wit blows in some fresh air into the hothouse atmosphere in the court. Um, Costuming, jewelry, and hairstyles were important, serving as the means of ethnic, regional, and hierarchical signification. They also represented emotional states. For instance, enter the king costumed as suffering from remorse, and enter Sakuntala with her hair done in a single braid to signify the grief of a woman separated from her husband. Um, the classical drama of India uses Prakrits or regional dialects as well as Sanskrit, which is spoken by Brahmins, kings, and high officials. Women, children, and the court jester speak Prakrit. Low characters like the fisherman and the policeman in Act 6 of Sakuntala also speak in dialect. This provides Sanskrit plays with a rich variety in speech, but it is not possible to make the differentiation between the classical language and the dialects and between the dialects themselves in translation. Another important point to keep in mind is Sakuntala having delineated love's ecstasy and fulfillment as well as its anguish in the separation that follows. The anger and bitterness of its cruel betrayal finally gathers it all in the closing scene in an epiphanic moment of the recognition, restoration, and reunion. It also adds something that is not present in the other two works, the child, token of love and symbol of continuity of the family and the survival of the sense. The action of the play of Sakuntala moves out of the green world of nature, set apart and centering around the heroine, who is presented as the lady of nature, into the gilded world of Dusanta's palace and pleasure gardens, and finds its solution in yet another world, a higher world that is inaccessible to the ordinary mortals and which partakes of the quality of timelessness because it is presided over by Maricha and Aditi. Sakuntala's portrait is also important. Um, Spiritual chase, the aspects of Sakuntala's personality ought to be kept in mind. She brings to the king something of significance that is lacking in his wife. Dusanta's childlessness, referred to indirectly in Act 1, is in the blessings pronounced by the anchorite, was emphasized in Act 2, is a metaphor for bareness of more than one sort. I might venture to characterize it as a spiritual barrenness. Dusanta is led by the deer into Sakuntala's world, the green world of nature possessing plenitude, fertility, beauty, and grace. Um, Later, he is led into yet another world, the golden world of Maricha and Aditi, which appears to be the world of nature perfected. Dusanta's narrow and enclosed world of the gilded court, circumscribed by the round of royal ceremonies and pleasures, is thus expanded by virtue of his encounter with Sakuntala, who is of this world and yet not wholly of this world. Curse. In the play, to the curse fall restoration motive, certain other elements are added, the loss and discovery of the child and heir to the throne, and the loss and recovery of the token of identity, a pattern of dream, illusion, and of forgetfulness, recollection, recognition, of which all are intricately interwoven. Folk and fairy tale contain irrational elements that are far from being realistic and are frequently immoral in its attitudes they display. The curses in them are prime examples of this irrationality, for the punishment meted out is invariably far in excess of the wrongdoing. Often punishment strikes sudden and swift, even in the case of an error committed unwittingly. So this is for the class, for the session today on Sakuntala. Hope you have taken down important points. All the reference material is going to be shared with you. The works cited are notes from the lectures on Abhijan Sakuntalam by my esteemed professor from undergraduation, Dr. Poonam Trivedi, who taught me in Indraprastha College for Women, University of Delhi, a well-known scholar in the field of Indian literature. I today wish to thank her for the enriching discourse on Indian classical literature, Edwin Giro, Rajan Chandra, Chandradhar Sharma, Surendranath Dasgupta, Raghavendra Bajpai, and egyan.kosh.ac.in for summary. Thank you.
नहीं भाई वो स्टूडेंट
So if students have any queries.
ठीक है यहाँ पे as well roll number
There is a
बताओ,
question
बताओ,
and
बताओ,
answer
बताओ।
options available on your screen.
Yes, yes, sir. So I'm going through it. Students haven't asked anything related to the text, but they're asking me regarding how to join the group and my voice not being clear. I apologize for my voice not being clear. I'll take care of it in the next session. Hope the session was enriching for you. and you got the notes that would be really important for you for the in the long term too. Thank you.